Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here, coming at you with another Path of Exile 2 video. I didn't think I'd actually make one on this topic, but here we are. I've been still playing Path of Exile 2, really enjoying it. We got a new update coming. I might actually go for level 99 or 100 in SSF. I've just really been liking the game. So still playing, still looking into things, and I stumbled upon a very interesting couple of videos talking about Rarity. And, if you just, don't care about the details, basically Rarity is cringe in POE2. That's it. And I pretty much never use that word, but all in all, I feel that Rarity, other than like the balance between life and energy shield, is possibly the next worst mechanic in Path of Exile 2. And I did actually praise it for being improved in this patch in my How Good is Path of Exile 2 Now video. And I think a lot of that praise was not quite accurate, let's say. It's just one of those things where it's very difficult to actually understand how effective different levels of rarity are and how they work on the game. So let's get into it. You might think that playing a game like Path of Exile 2, Rarity works kind of like it did in Diablo 2, or maybe even kind of like it did in Diablo 1, the OG ARPG magic find affix, where you basically, you find some pretty good loot, and if you want to find a little more, you get some magic find, and you can stack magic find like crazy, but eventually it's like a sideways parabola. It just kind of tapers off a little bit. It still gives you some improvement if you have crazy magic find. You would think that's how it works in Path of Exile 2, but that's not actually how it works in Path of Exile 2. It's not just about finding items. Rarity in Path of Exile 2 has the added mechanic that it upgrades things that drop. So, for example, it can upgrade currency. Instead of getting a normal transmutation orb, you can now get a transmutation orb Tier 2 or a transportation orb Tier 3. And this is really significant because a lot of the extremely powerful crafting methods utilize these currencies. So, once you have played the game a lot, a regular Exalted Orb is pretty much worth nothing. So a Tier 2 Exalted Orb is pretty good, and a Tier 3 Exalted Orb, oh my, is that insane. So it's not like a little bit better. You're dealing with vastly different levels of power when you can upgrade these currencies. Okay, so that's part of how it works. It also upgrades unidentified rare items or magic items. They're affix floors. So if you've played in higher level maps, you might kill a monster and it drops like unidentified crossbow, and it'll say like Tier 2 or something like that. And basically what that means is it creates a floor for stats not being able to have really low rolls. So like you can get life on an item, and you can get like 10 life if the item is like level 1. And you can get like 200 life on a chest if it's like level 70 something, right? Now the idea is that these affixes have different like affix levels, and when you get items with higher tiers, you basically create a floor, and the highest tier, is like a Tier 5, so a Tier 5 item culls all the crappy rolls on the stats. You might still get affixes you don't want on gear, but they'll generally be higher level affixes. So that is another thing that Rarity and Magic Find in general does accomplish in Path of Exile 2. A little bit unintuitive, but you'll get the hang of it if you have played the endgame. And another mechanic that is a little bit different than games like Diablo, only a little bit different, is that monsters have built-in magic find. So rares, I believe, have some built-in magic find, and bosses have quite a bit of built-in magic find, but this is fairly untested stuff, so, this kind of stuff we don't really know. And maps have built-in magic find, but you can manipulate that. If you make the map harder, you effectively increase the rarity among the other things that you can increase. Make it harder, make it more rewarding. And, we do know that in Path of Exile 2, it also has diminishing returns, but we don't have the exact formula like we have in Diablo 2, for example. So it's still kind of a closed box. And enter a new content creator that I didn't know existed, but he has made some fantastic videos. I'm actually covering his name with my nameplate. His name is Farham. If you do want to see his videos or the exact, I'll link the exact 2 videos that I kind of get a few clips from in this. He's actually a wonderful content creator, so I'm glad he covered this topic because it allowed me to discover him. So he made a video, Is It Worth It? Comparing Rarity bot impact on Duo Zesh. So I will just quickly summarize the video. If you want more details, please watch it. It'll be linked below. Basically, he plays in a 2-man party, and the other person in the group has a specific glove where all the kills in his area are counted as his, and then that character also stacks magic find. So he was able to stack varying levels of increased item rarity, and they were actually able to check how much stuff was dropping. And they had a really good method where, it's really difficult to see the currency upgrades because, what do you need to upgrade into a divine orb? It's just kind of hard to tell. But when it comes to the tiers on equipment, you can actually see it. It's actually evident. It's very obvious. So presumably these items work the same. These mechanics work the same way. And in my opinion, having played a ton this league, I do think they do work the same, just so you know. And he goes under the assumption that they do also work the same. He tested in Zesht, which is the Breach boss encounter. He ran 40 runs, I believe he says, for each 50 item rarity and 500 item rarity. And then they averaged and counted the amount of tiered equipment that they got at the end. Now, there are a pretty consistent number of monsters in this. I have done this a few times. There is a little bit of variance. So again, it's not an exact science, but this is really good. This is by far the best study of item rarity and magic find that I have seen in Path of Exile 2 ever. So credit to him, very good methodology. And most importantly, this zone, the pinnacle zone for the Breach boss, does not have any modifiers on it. So it's not like you do a map and sometimes the map mods give you rarity and sometimes they give you more than other times. It starts at 0, so they can really control for those, parameters. So very good stuff. And in this one, he has a chart here. I'm not going to zoom in on it too much because we'll discuss the actual numbers in the slide that I have. And basically, if you go from 50 to 500 magic find, you find a lot more stuff. You actually find fewer items that are no tiers or low tiers, like tier 1 or tier 2, so only a tiny bump in the floor. And that's because you find far more items that have tier 5, tier 4, tier 3 stats. Now, tier 3 rare drops are typically okay, but you really want the tier 4 and tier 5 equipment. Those are the ones that usually have very good odds of being strong. Now, this was actually very cool, very interesting, but as you may have guessed, between 50 and 500, it's kind of a massive difference, right? So, 50 item rarity, that's basically how much you have walking into like a rare map in general. So, it's kind of just like showing magic find versus no magic find. And who'da thunk it, magic find results in more items. So, not groundbreaking stuff, but the methodology is fantastic. And to further that, he made a follow-up video releasing a couple of days ago, filling in the gaps results of 100 item rarity. And he actually tested 150 also. So he basically filled in lots of the different gaps in between the 50 and 500. And again, this video is fantastic. I do encourage you guys to check it out. But I basically took this slide and ballooned it up for you guys to see. It is still a little bit blurry because that's just the best I can do. He didn't link the spreadsheet, but it is very interesting. Okay. So basically the difference between 50 and 100, he basically got pretty much the same tier 5 equipment. He got 8 more tier 4 equipment going from 50 to 100. So that's a pretty sizable jump. 4 more tier 3s, okay? So 50 versus 150, he got 7 more tier 5 equipment on average. Just keep in mind, this is going from 16 to 23. This is like 50% more good items going from 50 to 150. That's a massive jump. And tier 4 equipment, 12 more. Again, more than 50% more. So it's like a huge difference here. Absolutely huge difference. And then going the difference between 50 and 150 is also really interesting, right? Like 50 to 150 and 100 to 150, the numbers are pretty much the same, which basically shows that going from 50 to 100 is not that much of a difference. And then if you go from 150 to 500, there's no difference. Zero. Zero. No additional tier 5 equipment was dropped going from 150 item rarity to 500. This is like a good amount of item rarity on a character or a really, really well-rolled map to literally just only playing Magic Find bot. No extra tier 5s, only 3 extra tier 4s, 11 extra tier 3s, so it does seem to work on the really crappy loot. It still upgrades the really crappy loot. I would just argue, and he does the same in his videos, that tier 3 equipment is just not super great. Rarely would these ever end up being particularly good. So this is very interesting because it shows that if you have about 50 item rarity and you go to 100, not a whole lot happens there. But if you go from 100 to 150, you're talking about massive gains, like 60% more of the really good stuff that you want to find, right? And then if you go from 150 to 500, it's pretty much not even any better. Okay, so this is like mind-blowing to me, and probably most people that have actually watched his videos. Again, I encourage you guys to check that out because, you know, when we talk about Magic Find and implementing diminishing returns, that's probably not what people want. That is maybe not great. So there's a massive difference between 100 and 150. And after 150, it's like not very good. And again, this is not an exact science. He did 40 breach runs, which is a very good test in a very controlled way. But it's not an exact science, so maybe that number is like 140. Maybe it's like 135. But the pattern is definitely undeniable. Now, again, there are built-in Magic Find methods, and they are untested, and they're really, really hard to test, possibly even close to impossible to test, and how they synergize together. And generally, if you have been playing with like super juiced stuff, it still doesn't really matter for you, okay? Like if you're playing Deadeye, you're like level 100, you have like mirror tier gear, and you're running those maps that have like literally like 200 item rarity on them already, nothing changes, okay? Is there still a reason to juice your maps? Yes, there is still a reason to juice your maps, because usually when you're juicing a map, you're not only increasing the item rarity, you're also, usually at least, increasing the number of monsters and the type of monsters, because like rare monsters, they just drop more stuff, for example. So yes, there is still a reason to kind of juice maps, but you know, not all maps can be juiced. And I think the really big takeaway is this. All Pinnacle content has no rarity baseline. So it doesn't matter how much you're juicing your maps, because when you go and do Zesht, you can't juice the Pinnacle content. It's a 0 rarity zone. So if you're trying to farm like really good breach rings and stuff like that, well, you're out of luck unless you actually have 150 Magic Find. There's literally nothing you can do to improve it. It does not have the same system that the Waystones do, where you can increase the Magic Find by making them more difficult. And you know what's similar to Breach? Abyss. You know that zone where like all the valuable and good stuff is coming from, the league, the new zone that we have? Well, I was wondering how it took me like a week to find the Omen of Echoes, and that's because omens have rarity, and my character didn't have rarity. So even though I was doing the Abyss zones, I was doing them with 0 rarity. And again, we only had a look at the item tiers, but the currency tiers, they have pretty much the exact same system behind them. So people in my chat were telling me it's like, yeah, he gets like multiple echoes per day. Some guys say he gets like 6 or 7 per day. How are they doing that? Well, when you play in a trade environment, these things don't appear as big of a problem as they actually are, because even though you may not be interacting with Magic Find and playing optimally, someone else is, and the price on the market basically skews towards people that are power gamers, and a lot of power gamers play optimally and play with Magic Find and all that kind of stuff. But if you're not doing that, yeah, you're going to have problems. It is very difficult to actually get the really choice currencies and items that you need for crafting if you are not playing with Rarity, because specifically the Abyss Zone has no rarity in it. You have to have it on your character's gear, and you pretty much need to have 150%. So that is pretty wild to me. Rarity is basically a super premium affix. It basically makes gold amulets the best amulet base for everyone playing the game. And typically you're going to want to have an increased item rarity on every single suffix, and you want to try to get it on pretty much every single piece of gear: your amulet, your rings, your boot, your glove, your helmet. And if you do that, you can pretty much hit with a charm, you can probably hit 150 without sacrificing too much character power. But when you're first starting out, you probably want to focus on item rarity, because it's going to turbocharge your acquisition of these things. So a little bit of anecdotal stuff. Most of the stuff I've talked about so far is pretty much through tests, and very good testing methodology in my opinion. Anecdotally, I dropped like 160 rarity on my solo self-found character. It took me 1 week to find the first orb of annulment. I found 3 annulments in the same map, and then a few maps later on stream, I found 2 orbs of annulment in that map. They're pretty much just dropping all the time. I have infinity currencies. I really needed to get a few Omen of Echoes, and I found 4 in the last day, as opposed to finding 1 every 4 days. I really needed to get a perfect Exalt Orb and a few greater Exalt Orbs. I found 2 perfect Exalt Orbs in the last day, and I don't even know how many greater Exalts. They're just dropping all the time, so I just use them on whatever gear I want. So, this rarity system, transitioning over to finding potent currencies for crafting, it is absolutely happening. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. Again, anecdotal. Maybe I have like 15 hours played on my character since I converted him to a Magic Find build. But it is really, really strong. I would say that if you want to play optimally, Rarity is mandatory in solo self-found. Because while you can play trade, you can, earn currencies through many different ways: services, crafting, just playing the market, lots of stuff you can do. In solo self-found, where you have to find the stuff yourself, you are just not going to get these things. You're not going to get items that come from zones that have 0 baseline rarity without actually having Magic Find on your character, without having rarity on your character. So, yeah. When I opened the video and I said it's cringe, I think that is pretty cringe. Not a word I use lightly. I think it's extremely misleading in the current state, where high Magic Find pretty much doesn't do anything, but hitting 150 is even more important. And playing with no Magic Find and not juicing your maps like crazy is awful. You are getting significantly fewer drops. It's nice that at least you have the methods to juice your waystones to actually have like 150 rarity on the waystone itself right now. But if you're not doing that, your drops are absolutely going to suffer. So, super interesting stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed my talk. And let me know what you think.